So this morning I'll be talking about status and trends of riparian and aquatic habitat in the OESF. This is a long-term monitoring project that Teddy and others initiated in 2012. I started in 2014 on this project. Other key players are Kyle Martins, who you're going to hear from next. He's a fish biologist with DNR. And while I'm talking about stream habitat today, Kyle will be talking about the fish themselves. Another key player here is Alex Foster from P&W Research Station. He's been involved with this project from the beginning. So I know some of you in this room have seen my presentations on this topic before. So I'm just going to go over the monitoring program pretty briefly in a few slides, and then I will get into some recent results that we've gotten since the last time I presented this. Okay, so about the stream monitoring in the OESF. This monitoring program was initiated as a commitment from the 1997 State Trust Lands HCP, or Habitat Conservation Plan. And it seeks to answer the question of our DNR's conservation strategies, specifically riparian conservation strategies in the OESF, are they resulting in the anticipated habitat conditions? The primary focus is on salmonid habitat, but that's done with the understanding that if we create good habitat for salmon, we're also creating good habitat for many other associated species in and around these streams. Another key objective of this project is to provide local, scientifically sound data for DNR's management planning. An example of this management planning is the 2016 OESF Forest Land Plan. So the goal of the Status and Trends Monitoring Program is to evaluate status and long-term changes in riparian and in-stream habitat conditions in the OESF watersheds. These are watersheds managed for multiple objectives for timber production, for fish and wildlife habitat, and also for other ecosystem values. So I'll briefly go over the monitoring design. So we're focused here on type 3 streams, which are classified as the smallest class of fish-bearing streams. We're monitoring 50 streams in 50 different watersheds across DNR-managed lands that make up the OESF. So these streams, within each watershed, we sample the streams near the watershed outlet, and that's done with the understanding that any sort of management impacts within this watershed on the streams will show up here by the time the water gets near the watershed outlet. And to give you an idea of scale, these watersheds average about 550 acres in size. The stream channel width averages 16 feet, but the actual portion that has water in it is often less than that. And these watersheds we're monitoring they're not managed any differently than the rest of DNR land across the OESF. So to give you an idea of the rate of harvest, within these monitored watersheds, since 2013, 4% of the cumulative area has been thinned, and about 2.5% has been harvested through a regeneration harvest, or VRH, variable retention harvest. So the watersheds that we monitor were randomly selected from different strata, and the strata represent the full range of ecological conditions across the OESF. So in addition to these 50 red watersheds here, the DNR managed ones, we also monitor 12 reference watersheds. These are the ones in yellow, and these are watersheds that have no history of forest harvest. And it's somewhat difficult to find watersheds like that on the peninsula, and so we often had to go to federal lands to find them. And the reason we monitor these unharvested watersheds is to get an idea of the rate of habitat change over time in the absence of any harvest history. So we're looking at year-to-year variability there. Okay, so this program is built around 9 different habitat indicators, and within each of these 9 indicators, we measure multiple different variables. Let's mention these quickly. Channel morphology, basically the shape of the stream channel as it changes over time. We monitor water temperature year-round in all these streams once per hour. We measure the stream substrate. This is gravels, cobbles, other materials in the stream bed. In a subset of streams, we monitor stream discharge or stream flow, and that's in about 10 to 12 watersheds. We monitor in-stream wood, habitat units. These are things like pools, cascades, rapids, riffles. We measure stream shade, the shade directly above the stream channel. We monitor microclimate in the riparian zone, air temperature and humidity. And we also have plots where we monitor the riparian vegetation. That's primarily trees, also downwood, and understory too. So I'm going to talk about two topics today that we've learned about in recent years. And the first of these is stream temperature during the June 2021 heat wave that, if any of you were in Western Washington or BC at the time, probably remember it. This map shows the temperature anomaly during the heat wave, so how much warmer than normal it was across the landscape. And you can see the Western Peninsula is pretty dark red, so that's indicates we were kind of receiving the brunt of it. So some different questions came to mind after this heat wave in regard to stream temperature. The first question I had was, how warm did the streams get during the heat wave? Also wondered, what was the variation among streams? Did some get warmer than others? Or were some more affected by the heat wave? And also what factors were related to how warm a stream got, or how much a stream was impacted? And could we predict which streams got impacted more? And as I mentioned, we use these little temperature data loggers, and all our streams are submerged in the stream, and they record temperature once per hour continuously. So to give some context of how warm it got, so the top line, the dashed line, shows air temperature here in Forks. Got up to about 110, 112 degrees at the peak. This is the daily maximum temperature, so just one temperature per day is plotted here. That middle line is riparian air temperature, though, and this was a little surprising to me because it stayed quite cool near the streams relative to what happened here in Forks. So it maxed out at about 86 degrees at the warmest. So next time there's a heat wave like this, you might want to be sitting near a small stream. And then the water itself, what surprised me even more was the stream temperature, which got the average maximum stream temperature during that heat wave only got up to 62 degrees Fahrenheit, or a little over 16 degrees C. And that's average across all these streams, the 50 DNR managed and the 12 reference streams. Among those 62 streams, the warmest one actually peaked at only 67 degrees, which I thought was really not that warm. And incidentally, that was one of the streams in Olympic National Park. I can speculate later on why that was the warmest stream. But compared to previous years, we see the red line is during the heat wave. And that dashed blue line is the average of every year that we monitored prior to the heat wave. So typically it's around 54 degrees then, and then we get up to 62, so about an 8 degree Fahrenheit boost there. The only other year that had a real warm anomaly was 2015. Probably remember that was an interesting year too. So the next question is, did some streams get warmer than others? So this, if you look at this scale here, this shows the maximum temperature. So that's, even if it was only at that temperature for an hour, that was the maximum temperature during the heat wave. And so the max ranged across these streams from 55 degrees up to about 67 degrees. So there was some variation there. But looking at, the question as to why some of these streams got warmer, I wanted to see if these streams just warmed up during that heat wave, or were they already warm? So I looked at the temperature of the streams for the week prior to when that heat wave hit. And so that's what this graph is showing the relationship between the temperature that the streams already were before the heat wave came to that heat wave, the temperature during the heat wave. And you see a pretty strong relationship here. So this indicates that if you want to know which streams are most susceptible to getting warm during an anomaly like this, like that heat wave, then you can just look at which ones are already warmest in summer, and those are the ones that are going to be most susceptible. Next, we wanted to know which factors were related to how warm a stream got. So could we just look at factors related to a stream or a watershed and predict how warm that stream is going to get during the heat wave or even just in a regular summer? So we looked at all sorts of factors related to the stream itself, like stream size, the steepness, and then we looked at watershed scale factors like elevation of the watershed, the size of the watershed, aspect, the harvest history of the watershed. And going through all these, we found, I won't get into all the statistics today, there's just not time, but 4 factors really came to the top as being really good at predicting how warm a stream was going to get during that heat anomaly. The first, I'll talk about these in order. The first one is the amount of bedrock in the stream bed. This was actually the strongest predictor. And this is a picture of a stream that's got a lot of just exposed bedrock in the stream bed. In a stream like this, all of the water that's flowing through that valley is on top of the bedrock. And so it's really more exposed to the environment. You've just got a few inches of water there. And so it's more easily warmed, essentially. Whereas other streams that have a stream bed of gravel and cobbles, you not only have the water flowing on the surface, but you also have water subsurface flowing through all those materials. And so it's mixing. And so that mixing provides sort of a buffer that moderates the temperature. And so that's why we believe that streams flowing over bedrock are more sensitive. And other research in the region has shown this as well. The second factor that was predictor is pretty obvious. It's elevation. Just going up in elevation from the coast, inland, the higher watersheds remained cooler. So not terribly surprising there. Another very strong predictor of how warm streams got was the watershed level exposure to solar radiation. And so this is kind of a fancy way of calculating aspect for a whole watershed. So this map just shows, red being the highest solar exposure and blue being the lowest. And in this example watershed here, you can see certain parts of it are more south-facing, more exposed to sunlight. And we looked at solar radiation exposure, just in the streams themselves, and then we looked at the scale of the whole watershed. And it really, what affects the streams was really at the whole watershed scale. So that was something I was a little surprised to learn. And the final factor that was a strong predictor was stream width. These are pictures of one of our smallest streams and one of our largest streams that we're monitoring. And so the smaller streams were cooler. And the reason for this is they're almost always closer to the source. And so those streams, the water in those streams has had less time to be exposed to the environment, less time to be exposed to solar radiation and warm air. And so these were cooler during the heat wave than the larger streams, which had flowed further. So what do we do with this information? Well, this helps to build a picture of sensitivity of different streams to warm temperatures, which is, of course, with climate change implications, something we're concerned about. This is kind of just the beginning of this particular research project. We haven't published it or anything like that yet, but it really does give us a better picture of which streams we should be more concerned about as far as summer high temperatures go, in which sort of landscape level factors predict that sensitivity. So the second topic that I'll talk about today is another aspect of this research that we've been working on, and this is the relationship between in-stream wood and pool formation. So we care about both of these because for in-stream wood, it's really important in forming the stream channel. It adds complexity to the channel. It slows down the flow of the water. It creates habitat features such as pools, and it stores sediment behind it. That's a really important function because sediment is full of small particles, including organic matter and nutrients. And the reason we're particularly interested in pools is that's where a lot of aquatic life hangs out. The water's flowing more slowly, so it's takes less energy to just hang out there and forage, especially for fish. So we like in-stream wood and we like pools. So Kyle led a project that resulted in this paper. And this uses our data sets he collected in his fish monitoring as well as this habitat monitoring to look at the relationships between in-stream wood and pool formation. And the part of this project that I worked on was the question of which pieces of wood in the stream are more likely to form pools. So we took measurements of upwards of 800 individual pieces of wood in these streams, and we measured things like different dimensions, like the length of the piece, the diameter of these pieces, and a bunch of other variables. And then we plugged this into a statistical model that tried to predict whether or not each piece was going to form a pool based on the characteristics of the pieces. So which pieces of wood are likely to form pools? Well, the results, I guess, seem not terribly surprising. There were two strong predictors, and that is the diameter of the piece of wood and the length within the channel. And during this analysis, we controlled for stream characteristics like the size of the stream and the steepness of the stream. But these two factors sorted out to the top. In looking at the big picture here, we found that for each additional inch of diameter that a log had in the stream, that log was 5% more likely to form a pool. And we also found for each additional foot of length within the stream channel, that log was 8% more likely to form a pool. So we look at this graphically. This is the different, sorting these logs into different diameter classes in inches here. And we looked for each class, what percentage of those pieces formed pools in the stream. And the trend I see here is with smaller pieces, there's an increase with size, and you get up to 16 inches diameter. And from then onward, these are all relatively effective for forming pools. About a 25% chance that each of those pieces would form a pool. So we also looked at length within channels. So we measured the length of the whole log and also the length that was just within the stream channel. And you see kind of a similar trend here. It increases up to get to this 4 to 6 foot length class. And then from there, it's fairly steady. So pieces less than 4 feet long, not so effective in creating pools. 4 feet and up were pretty good. I can't really explain this 14 to 18 foot anomaly here other than just saying that these pieces are extremely good at forming pools. So what do we do with this information? We've been working for several years. Kyle has especially been working on this, understanding the dynamics of in-stream wood, both legacy wood from decades ago, as a result of past management practices prior to the HCP, and current riparian forest conditions, relating those to inputs of wood into the stream. So since the HCP, and actually for about a decade before, streams of this size on DNR managed land in the OESF have been buffered. Since the HCP, there's been a minimum 100 feet unharvested buffer zones on each side of the stream. In practice, those are expanded around other sensitive features. So they're about 150 feet on average on each side of the stream. So in that unharvested forest, that buffer zone, we're looking at the forest dynamics and how we think that those forests will eventually contribute wood as trees die and fall into the stream, especially as the early successional alder starts breaking up and falling into streams, and as these forests become more dominated by conifers. So what's next with this project? This summer, our technicians, Emily and Tristan, are sampling large woody debris in the riparian forest, and that'll really help us to understand that picture, understand those dynamics of the riparian forest contributing wood to streams. The next 2 summers, we'll be doing our 10-year follow-up stream habitat assessments, and so we'll be able to look at 10-year trends. And big picture here, we're looking at how things are changing under HCP management, and if there is any change in habitat conditions. And our next analyses coming up, we'll be looking at the large woody debris in the riparian zone as well as 10-year trend analysis. So I'd like to acknowledge our current field staff, Emily and Tristan, others who have come back from multiple seasons in the field, and many others, too many to name, as well as Olympic region staff, especially Bill Wells. We had a lot of really helpful scientific advisors in this project. And if you want to learn more, you can get the publications I referred to, as well as a report that we finished last year that talks about the first 7 or 8 years of this monitoring project. It's pretty in-depth. These are all available at the website, DNR's OESF website. So if you go there, look up, you can click on the research and monitoring projects. And the first 2 research monitoring projects you'll see is this one and the fish monitoring that Kyle is leading. Also there's something called a flip book, which is a sort of a summarized version of this whole project in about 15 pages, which gives you a really good overview. So yeah, thanks.